That's better. That's much better. Interestingly, I just tried this a second ago and it went really weird. Very, very weird. Well, on Zoom, anyway. However, it's Thursday Thoughts. And yes, I've been thinking again. Sometimes not such a good idea, some people might say. However, now, recently I've been thinking about conversations and communication. And I've had a few interesting conversations and some interesting communications too. Throughout this time, we've been interested in and having an interesting time with communication and conversation and connection. And interestingly enough, that was just seen by my first attempt at the live this morning. When I went back to my Zoom page to record, and the connection was such that it was just a whole load of pixelated little squares. I thought, oh, that's not right, is it? So I came out of it again and tried again. And it's interesting because sometimes we go into conversations and we try to connect with people and we don't get quite what we're looking for, and then we leave the conversation, break the connection, and never go back. It was something that interested me also when it came to conversing with other beings who speak a totally different language, as in the language of nature and animals. When I was doing psychology at Glasgow Uni, and I thought, oh, language, wonderful. Oh, I'm just going to love this. It's going to be great. And I suddenly realised that what they were doing was trying to make the animals speak our language, whichever language that might be. In our case, it would be English, which is one of the hardest languages to learn, by the way. I mean, think of it. A stool can be something you sit on or something that you pass. Animals tend to have a communicative way of using body language, which we also have. And we use it quite happily without even thinking about it. However, we've been thinking about it a lot since we started communicating and connecting via this media. Because people have been complaining that they can't deal with networking, they can't deal with talking to people in groups like the large groups that are on Zoom, because people are all in little tiles and you can't see their body language. It might well be the first time they've actively thought about how they are coming across to people when they are physically separated from them, but actually closer than they might be otherwise. I say that because when we're communicating the way we're communicating now, you're seeing me wherever you are. You're listening to me wherever you are, so my voice is going with you. What I'm saying, what I'm doing, how I'm expressing myself is all there. Now, I am a pretty expressive person, and most people will tell me it's very difficult for me to hide what I'm feeling because it shows on my face all the time. Right. Really must look into that. However, being expressive, there's nothing wrong with it. It's a way of emoting. It's a way of allowing people to understand where you are. It also shows up another psychological thing called incongruence. If I'm saying yes, definitely, yes, 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 of course, I'm meaning get out of here, not at all. Unless I'm Greek, which that means yes. So you see, you have to be careful when it comes to the language that we use and how we communicate. and how we read body language. I'm fascinated by people who read body language, and sometimes, particularly when it comes to those who read it for a profession in the criminal end of the spectrum. So they're looking at people's tics and facial expressions, and they're actually making a story of what the person is really saying. Not what's coming out of their mouth, but what's coming out of their whole being. And the unconscious tics that we have, that we let go. I do think sometimes about the amount of times that I blink. Actually, I have blepharitis. So, without my little drops, and even with my little drops, I have to blink because my eyes are getting dry. It's almost as if the last Westie with dry eye turned around and said to me, "Oh, you want to think how I'm feeling? Have some of this." But I think it runs in the family. But anyway, understanding that we can't always make someone else speak our language, or something else speak our language, is key to being in connection with that being. There are many people who can have connections with other people who don't speak a word of their language, but somehow there's a bond that connects because they understand the energy between them. And they may not even be thinking about that energy. They may not be in that hippy-dippy mode. And I'm not saying that in a derisive way, because I love hippy-dippy stuff. And I call it hippy-dippy because it encompasses the idea of an era when we were really starting to think about what we did in the world actually caused ripples. It caused effects to happen. We were the cause. And being more aware of that and attuning ourselves to a better vibrational energy. Yeah, I'm getting hippy-dippy. But actually the earth vibrates. And the sound coming off that vibration is a sea. Look it up. We are all creatures of energy. We hold so much energy inside us. And it cannot all be expressed with words, although beautifully done in many cases. Our vocabulary shrinks day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year. And these new words that are coming in that are added to the dictionary, well, some of the old words are going out. Some of the old words were really, really good at describing things. Have a look for old words that have been taken out of the OED and see what you can find there. When we're looking at communication, particularly with nature, first of all we have to look at where we're standing. Many of us think we're standing away from, above and beyond anything that's not human. And by that I mean plants and rocks and everything, basically. But without all of those other things, where would we be? We wouldn't be here, that's for sure. There would be no food, there would be no place to grow things, there would be no water, there would be no us. So, understanding that actually we are animals, we're mammals. We give birth to live beings and we suckle them. Although some reptiles do that too. So much maybe suckle, but there are crossovers, shall we say, in evolution. Getting ourselves to understand that we're actually part of the pack, not separate from it, and we don't lead it. We may be on top of the food chain, but actually we're not at the moment. There's a virus that's on top of the food chain at the moment. And we're getting to understand that perhaps we're not quite so invincible as we thought we were when it comes to our survival as a species. So I think, for me, the understanding that there is such a thing as Conversations with Nature, which is a world summit coming soon, which I believe is going to allow us to understand more about the animals that we don't see, so don't think about so much, unless we're looking at David Attenborough on the television. And even then we're like, oh, that's sweet, that's nice, oh, isn't that nice? And then we go and eat a packet of McVitie's digestives that are full of palm oil. And yeah, it's very hard to go into a place that's selling food and find anything that doesn't have palm oil in it. And that's basically because our government decided that they were going to invest heavily in palm oil as biofuels, because they wanted to make something happen environmentally, get away from diesel. Did it get away from diesel? No, it just ended up in our food. It ended up deforesting half of Sumatra and places of that ilk, taking away habitat and releasing things that perhaps should have been left where they were. We have opened Pandora's box in order to put something into our food that shouldn't be there in the first place. There's something to think about. How do we stop it? Well, we complain, we write to our MPs, and we stop buying the food. At the moment, we could have the time to make our own and learn how to be more self-sufficient, if we felt like it. But most of us don't. That's okay. As long as we're aware, though, of what we're actually doing. I discovered recently that there's a thing, and I think it's a Hahnemannian thing that it's called, in that when we are asked a question, or we're wanting to ask a question, we will swap it out for an easier question, and therefore we allow a lot of leeway for the other party to play in. Really, it comes down to whether or not we're going to think about the hard stuff and deal with it, or if we're just going to let someone play in the no man's land that the easy stuff leaves. It's all about communication. It's all about connection. We are connected to everything, and everything is connected to us. And that means we have a responsibility for it. Some of us will choose to actively go for that, some of us will passively go for it, and some of us will just not bother about it at all. That's kind of human nature. But as we trundle along in the thrall of this situation, this pandemic that we find ourselves in, I wonder if it wouldn't be good to actually learn a little bit about body language, and learn a little bit more about what we're hearing and where the no man's land is. Just for our own sakes. And then maybe start to do things for ourselves that we might not normally do. Think about changing part of our garden into a vegetable patch. If we don't have a garden, growing what food and herbs that we can on window boxes, or in plant pots on the patio, or out on the balcony. That might be an idea. As a train of thought, just think about how interesting it might be if we actually could do little or do more about talking to and understanding nature. Since we're part of it, wouldn't it be good to be able to speak the language a little bit better, at least? I'll see you tomorrow.